Finding affordable housing in Canada it is an enormous challenge in almost every single part of the country. It can even be more challenging for newcomers to Canada for a whole host of reasons. One of them, they don't have a credit history here. A company called SingleKey is hoping to help make housing more accessible for newcomers by providing property managers with access to international credit history to assuage some of the concerns that they might have about the people moving into their properties. Today, we're joined by SingleKey's MacKenzie Wilson to talk more about how this works. Hello there.
Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
What is SingleKey?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, we're all about screening better, being better in the rental industry up front. The biggest challenge for landlords and homeowners is in a very short period of time, building enough trust to give a complete stranger complete control of likely one of the most expensive things they own in their whole portfolio. So on the beginning of the show, we're talking about new Canadians coming to the country. They're also figuring a big challenge. They're credit invisible, is what we call it, where they're a completely unknown entity. And unfortunately, what happens, especially in low vacancy, hyper competitive market with lots of tenants are vying on rental ads, is they end up offering some money up front, typically paying 6 to 12 months of rent up front, which can be quite challenging if they're trying to start their brand new life in a new country. So what we've been very fortunate to do here at SingleKey, Canada's first, we've partnered with Nova Credit, which I know you've had on the show previous, to allow these newcomers to bring their credit score from their home country and actually start off on the right foot, and it allows them to kind of get into that rental sooner. And the nice thing about that as well is now they're not paying, depending where you are across the country, 6 to 12 months of rent can easily be $30,000 or more. So they can keep that money in their pocket, start their life sooner, and get into the rental.
What are the challenges that the property managers need to get over in order to be willing to look at something else? Because I can imagine you're a landlord, you've got 10 people who on paper qualify, like their income's there, they seem like nice people. 9 of them have a traditional credit score, and one of them has this other thing. How do property managers wrap their mind around that?
Yeah, it comes back to collecting the information. So again, this first across Canada, we're having our ability to allow, and we probably cover it too. We cover 80% of new Canadians that come in the country. We're able to help them bring their home country's credit score. And the other nice thing that Nova Credit's done is they've standardized that credit score, because you got to think about this. We're talking about all these different international foreign countries. They have their own monetary system. They have their own credit bureaus. They've standardized their home country's credit into what we recognize here in North America as a credit score. So it makes it easy for a homeowner or a property manager to take and have that really apples to apples comparison, and allow the new Canadian to just be shortlisted just like any other local resident to qualify for that rental. So they're looked at on the same page.
What have you noticed in terms of countries in which this is effective and countries in which it's less effective, mostly because they are not countries in which credit ratings, credit scores are widely adopted? So if someone's moving here from Australia, okay, the US for sure. But if someone's moving here from sub-Saharan Africa or is a refugee from, the Middle East or something, they may not have that credit history in their country of origin.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about Nova, that they're adding new countries all the time. I think the latest country we just added was Ukraine, which has been quite timely with the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. So it is always expanding. But I guess probably more importantly, though, they still have the ability to show how someone's used their credit in their home country, because that's the really key part here, is how they manage their financial habits. And typically, they borrow money on credit, are they paying that back in a timely manner that's the standard in their country?
SingleKey's model, as you mentioned, is to work with property managers. What's their incentive to use this additional tool? What's in it for them? How do you sell it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, whether, again, property manager or homeowner, the biggest challenge in this industry is all of your work's done. Like, I'd say 99% of your work is done up front when you're selecting, vetting, and finding that tenant to put in the rental. You do that job right. I'll even go as far as say the rest of the tenancy is on autopilot. You check in, you're doing your inspections, your maintenance checks, perhaps an appreciation gift at Christmas time. but really that job is 10 times easier. If you don't get that job done up front of your proper due diligence when you select a tenant and you put the wrong person in, your stress levels go up. Not only you're not making money, you're probably having damages to your property. And it just it consumes a lot of your time. So there's incentives on both sides, but particularly on the homeowners and property managers to do this job right to make the rest of the tenancy go smoothly.
More broadly speaking, what are some of the challenges, opportunities that your property managers see in terms of this demographic? Because I can imagine, I'm just going to like throw out a whole bunch of ones that would occur to me. So some of them might be dealing with unconscious bias, racism. Some of them might have had a bad experience with someone who didn't pay the rent that then informs their willingness to rent to someone else. On the pro side, folks who come to Canada have given a lot to be here, many of them, and they're like pretty committed to follow through and behave with integrity because this is their new big shot. What are some of the themes that that you would notice or your property managers would notice about this newcomer demographic?
Yeah, well, I'll speak from my personal experience. I've got a few rentals here in Calgary, and half of my rentals right now I've got to new Canadians. And generally, when people come to the country, especially a new country, they just want to get their life going. They want to get their kids in school. They want to get their jobs going. They just want stability, and they're incredibly hardworking, great work ethics. That's from my personal experience. They make amazing tenants. They're really easy to work with. And probably to add to that, yeah, that's kind of how I would wrap it up. I mean, probably the other thing too, we have a rent guarantee program, which is our first across the country. Is exactly as it sounds. We'll guarantee rent based on a set of circumstances that the tenant has to qualify with having active employment. But the beauty about that part is too, is again, someone who's coming to the country who's a complete unknown entity, we can guarantee their rent and give that peace of mind and comfort to the property manager or the homeowner to accept this person. So really excited. We're breaking down a lot of, as you've mentioned, preconceived or stereotype or barriers to allow people to find their homes quicker.
When you say guaranteed rent, do you mean that you're guaranteeing the property manager that rent will come into their bank account? Say more about that.
Yeah, so it depends whoever owns a property, whether it's owned by a business, an individual owner, or it could be an add-on service that a property manager can take to the clients. That is, again, back to that private owner. But essentially what it is, we'll guarantee up to 12 months of unpaid rent or $60,000, whichever comes first. We'll cover $10,000 in malicious damage. So that can be anything from hose kicked in the wall to broken windows. It could be anything. And then the last part of it, we'll also cover up to $2,000 in legal and eviction costs if worst case comes to shove and you have to go down that route of removing the tenant from the property. And all this is for a premium of 5% or on the monthly rent.
Gotcha. Okay, tell me a bit more about the business model for SingleKey. How does it work? How do you make your money?
Yeah, so we make our money in two main areas. Obviously, our job is from that lead to lease window or scope of business is to provide as much relevant information to help make the most informed decision possible. So that's our credit reports. Again, we're the force of the country to work with Nova Credit. We also have access to all the major credit bureaus, so TransUnion and Equifax direct access. So we've made that information very easy to read. So if you're someone new off the street, you've never seen a credit score before, this is something you could pick up quite quickly and be informed. And then, of course, then the last part here is also first in the country is we're guaranteeing rent. And in this day and age with affordability where it's at, you look at the Vancouvers and the Torontos, we're seeing rent to income ratios start creeping up north of 45%, up to 50%, where people are that stretched to afford properties. So having a second layer that makes it easier for people to get into properties if they're already employed, just really helps the market roll and help people find that housing.
We're having this conversation largely because of your the innovation that you demonstrated on credit history for newcomers to Canada. Doesn't work for everybody. Either the property manager isn't a SingleKey client, or they don't have the history that's going to support their case that they're going to be a good tenant. What advice do you have to those would-be renters if this is something that it's not going to round out their application?
Well, then it comes back to making that first impression count as much as possible. Typically, if you go read a renter ad, everyone has their own kind of process they follow to vet tenants. And there's usually instructions in the ad. It might say text or call or email. So follow whatever the steps are they've asked you, provide the information. we're looking for a little bit of history. We want to understand why someone's moving. So you should have a bit of a narrative to share with the potential property manager, and show up on time on your viewing. Text or call before to confirm the date, make sure nothing's changed. And when you get to the property, answer the questions, but ask questions. It shows that you're interested. Ask how you look after and maintain the property. At the end of the day, we want as homeowners, someone to look after the property, obviously pay rent on time, but give the landlord, the owner, that care and attention. They know the property is going to be looked after. So if you're asking about where the vacuum is, how to turn off the water main if there's a break, all these small things.
I could just imagine throwing in, just so you know, I'm obsessive about cleanliness. Do you prefer Mr. Clean or Vim? And then they'd be like, oh, wow, he's going to be totally keeping this like spick and span.
And maybe an add like a Canadian custom is we typically take off our shoes at the front door. So those small things show that you're attentive and you're the right person to fit for the property.
Really interesting. MacKenzie, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bruce.
MacKenzie Wilson is with SingleKey, and we were having a conversation about a challenge that many newcomers face, which is they go to apply for a rental, apartment, condo, whatever it is, and they don't have a credit history. SingleKey, in partnership with Nova Credit, have, at least for a lot of renters, removed that as a hurdle.